Hey everybody, welcome to week 7 of our English 3010 online course. So this week we are working on finalizing your project 2, which is really just a presentation of your research so far. We've been doing a lot of that. The past couple of weeks you guys have been doing an excellent job both finding and evaluating and summarizing secondary sources that you've been collecting within an issue or around a question that is part of your discourse community's inquiry. So this week, I want to talk a little bit about Project 2 in the sense of what that presentation should or could contain. And I want to talk a little bit about the readings this week because they're listed in your Canvas overview page as bonus readings. But I want to highlight some of the content to hopefully persuade you to at least skim them because they're going to be useful not just for Project 2, but also for Project 3. So I think I'm just going to switch over to our Canvas view and get right to it. Okay, so here we are in week 7, and you'll notice that there are 3 potential bonus reads for this week. I haven't assigned a reading discussion on purpose because you guys are working really hard getting your Project 2 presentations together, so we've got enough on our plates. But let me just start with a brief pitch about why these readings are going to be useful to you. So first of all, the Barnett and the Guptill, these are 2 adapted chapters that are just like pasted into your Canvas site. And both of these, Barnett's sticking your nose in, positioning yourself in academic writing, and Guptill's listening to sources, talking to sources, these 2 pieces are incredibly practical. And I'll show you why in just a minute. But if nothing else, you owe it to yourself to at least skim through these pieces for some of their practical info. The Madalena piece, I need you to say why first person is important in college writing. This is a piece from a book, an online access, open access text called Bad Ideas About Writing, which is a fabulous title. But it's also going to address maybe a more theoretical question, or maybe misconception is the better way to put it. A lot of students are told, don't use I, especially when you get to college. You can't use I, you can't use first person. And depending on your discipline and depending on the genre, that could be very true. But oftentimes, academic writing does require us to use the first person, and this text gets into why that is. So if that's a question you've ever had, like, should I use first person? When do I use first person? This is the chapter for you. Now, I said Barnett and Guptill are very practical, and so some of the things that you'll find here are discussions of literally how to integrate sources into academic writing. Things from attributive verbs to how to create those really scholarly sounding hedging phrases to how to establish your argument within a particular conversation. Guptill is going to get even more into this whole idea of your thesis and how your thesis can be drawn from your sources, but still separate from your sources as it should be. And then Guptill is going to get more in depth with an example. This is a beautiful set of paragraphs where the integration of sources is really demonstrated. So it's worth taking a look to sort of see some of the moves. And then Guptill is going to look at principles that we can abstract from those examples. So the reason why I assigned you guys these as bonus reads, once again, they are super valuable. You may or may not be comfortable or super familiar with how to integrate sources. And so depending on your level of comfort, you can use these to more or less effect. But as we move into Project 2, I just wanted to say that Both Barnett and Guptill, and even Madalena, are going to be presenting us ideas for how we, as scholars, situate ourselves within a scholarly conversation, which is exactly what you're doing when you are making a claim and supporting it with evidence. This works in writing, as you're going to see when we get into Project 3 and start working on our literature review essay. We will be making a claim and supporting it with evidence in writing. But up here in your multimodal presentation, you're going to start doing that move talking. And here's the interesting thing is that in scholarship, we do both. I, as a scholar, do a lot of writing, but I also do a heck of a lot of presenting my scholarship at regional, national conferences, to my colleagues here at Wayne State University, and then also to some extent to my students as well. So the ability to use some of these techniques that the bonus readings from this week are demonstrating for you, it's incredibly integrated into both how we write and how we speak as members of a particular scholarly discourse community. Okay, so that's my pitch. Hopefully you guys can check out these readings and get lots from them. But for this week, week 7, we are really working on reporting on our research progress. Now, just to remind you, we've been doing these Cornell notes for a couple of weeks now, and sometimes we might kind of lose the forest for the trees. The whole reason that I've been asking you to find sources and find more sources and find even more sources, now write notes on all of them, is because I'm trying to help you collect this body of scholarship. Really, I'm helping you help yourself. I'm just kind of prompting you. You guys are doing this work. You are collecting for yourself examples of a conversation in your discourse community. It's a conversation about a topic or a research question or a set of research questions. And this week, what you guys are going to be doing is presenting where you are so far. What are you noticing people writing about so far as you've been reading all of these scholarly sources? So this presentation is going to demonstrate how your research is addressing one specific aspect of the conversation. I'll talk more about that at the end of this video. But so for this week, you want to watch the week 7 instructor video, which you're already doing. Good job. You're going to read any feedback from me in Canvas, which of course, my feedback for last week's assignments will be a little bit slower in coming because of the extra 2 days that I gave you guys. Remember, your deadline was pushed to Tuesday, which is tomorrow. So I won't even see a lot of your Cornell notes, the color-coded ones, until tomorrow at the earliest, probably Wednesday. So keep your eyes peeled for feedback from me on that. Meanwhile, you can be creating your presentation on your research in progress, uploading it to the peer review discussion thread, and both watching other people's presentations and giving feedback. So you'll review other classmates' presentations, do a bonus reading or 3, write your feedback for your classmates. Remember to hit higher order concerns, middle order concerns, and lower order concerns for 2 classmates. Also pose them a probative question at the end. What could they do? It's just something for them to think about in terms of revision. Compose, revise, submit your multimodal presentations. And if you're still in the process of setting up your professional interview with a member of your discourse community, keep working on that. So it kind of breaks down like this. By Wednesday-ish, you want to have watched your video, or read if you want it silent, sure. Looked at classmates' research in progress, if there's any posted, take notes on your reading, give peer review feedback. Really, we're doing a lot of drafting, reviewing other people's stuff, giving them feedback, receiving feedback, revise for your Project 2 full draft. So what that means is if you post a video and you get some feedback on it, don't be afraid to either get in there with your editing tools and edit things or re-record. The videos themselves are not supposed to be that long, remember? So it wouldn't perhaps hurt, and maybe it will help a lot to think about feedback that you receive and do some re-recording. Just because you've made a video doesn't mean that it's the best version. You know what I'm saying? My brother-in-law's a video editor, so I don't know anything about it myself, but I know that videos were made to be edited. Okay, so I'm going to pull back to our full view and talk you through the content of this Project 2 multimodal presentation in just a second, but let's just take a look at the assignment just to kind of resituate ourselves. PowerPoint. It doesn't have to be PowerPoint, remember, but you're making a video with audio and visual parts to it. Now, for the assignment, remember, it's only 3 to 5 minutes, and your slide deck, in whatever platform you use, needs to have a revised visual aid. So this could be your synthesis tree, this could be an infographic, something to represent the whole conversation. And then any additional graphics or visuals that you think would help illustrate your points. Of course, any outline you have is just to keep you on track so that you can get through all your points in 3 to 5 minutes. And the discussion of your work should feature the following elements, okay? What is your research question? What is the kernel that you are investigating here? And what's the overview of all the source material? So that's where you would perhaps show your infographic or your synthesis tree or your concept map that's helping you sort of place all of these articles that you've been reading within the conversation. A clear explanation of how everything comes together around your purpose. What are you trying to get at, and how do all of these sources come together and touch on your question, your purpose? All right, an identification of any problems, gaps, or additional questions. Anything? I feel like I'm going to sneeze. Achoo, excuse me. Okay. Maybe I'll edit it out. Maybe I'll leave it in there for posterity. Who knows? All right. Any problems, gaps, or additional questions? So this is research in progress. There might be more that you're going to need to find out. And spoiler alert, we're going to be finding and reading and synthesizing even more next project. And then a conclusion that presents a brief rhetorical analysis, a hypothetical scenario in which you would deploy a literature review. So, for example, in preparation for a research proposal, or if you wanted to create a meta review, or like who wants to know this information, right? Rhetorical analysis means thinking about the rhetorical triangle, the rhetor, the message or purpose, and the audience. If you're the rhetor, what would your purpose be, and who would your audience be for all of these sources and all of this material that you're gathering? Would you be presenting it at a conference? Would you be presenting it as foundational material to help you get approval for a research project? Would you be presenting it as an analysis of all of the information on your particular topic? That's what we're after there in the conclusion. Okay, let me pull back to our full view. Okay, so in the end, your research and progress was the word I was going for. Research in progress is going to be talking about what are you honing in on with your reading of all these secondary sources. And when we think about any literature review, we usually think about it in the shape of a funnel. So if you've ever used a funnel, you know that they are really wide. Their widest point is at the top, and then it kind of like slopes and slopes and slopes down into this very small opening at the bottom. And what you want to do with any kind of research in progress presentation, like we're doing with Project 2, or a literature review, like you're going to do in Project 3, is you want to talk through the funnel. So with this Project 2, you're trying to tell us how you got from the widest part or the most basic information within your discourse community, and then where you went from there to get to something very specific like your research question. So I'm going to do a quick example from my own research, and hopefully this will help demonstrate this funnel shape that I'm talking about. And I'm going to do it verbally because this is what you're going to do in your Project 2. So I just recently completed work on a small grant where I was doing an assessment project on the composition learning community, of which our class is a part. And I'm going to start with my widest ring in the discourse community scholarship by saying that within rhetoric and composition, which is my discipline, my discourse community, there are lots of conversations around both learning communities to support undergraduate students and assessment and its importance, both on a classroom level and a programmatic level. Now, within learning community research, there are many things that are talked about in terms of what are the best ways to assess whether or not a learning community is actually helping students. But so far, there are not very many quantitative studies about it. And in terms of assessment, there's almost nothing. Most of the scholarship, most of the existing articles about learning communities within rhetoric and composition talk about either what kind of folks should be peer mentors, or how to start a learning community, or have anecdotal evidence based on a handful of people's experiences. Over here in assessment, we have a long, deep tradition of studies about how to make assessments viable at a programmatic level. So how to assess many, many, many courses. What are some of the best and most valid quantitative methods? What counts as something valid and repeatable within assessment? So now, if we think about, there's not really very many articles about quantitative assessment for learning communities, but we know that there are lots of robust assessment methods that have been tested. Now we come to the gap, or the small part of the funnel. As I've pulled down from just broad learning communities and assessment to some of the specific things that are out there, now we come to my question, which was, how can I know if a learning community is actually helping my students? And my hypothesis was, can I assess this learning community in quantitative ways? And spoiler alert, the answer is yes, I can. And another cool thing is, yes, learning communities, at least the CLC, is incredibly quantitatively helpful to students. But that's for another time. But do you see what I did there? I went from that broadest part of the funnel, talking through some of the more specific studies and conversations within, as I got narrower and narrower to my particular question. Now, in this example, it's kind of complicated because I'm drawing from two major conversations and putting them together. But that's kind of what we do when we acknowledge a gap. We might have to pull from another conversation within our discourse community to help us fill the gap or hypothesize what might fill the gap in the research. Okay, so if you have any questions about my wild gesturing in the air or the funnel shape, in which your research in progress should be presented, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. Your peer mentors are amazing and they are totally here for you. So make sure that you're utilizing them as your resources. And I hope that you guys are enjoying the beautiful, sparkly snow and don't have to go out in it that much. I will talk to you guys in next week's video. Bye, everyone.